Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today we're going to be doing a deep dive into the global TV and film and media landscape, all thanks to Further and Better's Global TV, Film and Media Industry News Roundup from March 11th, 2025.
Right, and it looks like we have a lot to cover today. A buffet of new productions, some tech trends that are changing the industry, and some deals.
We'll be exploring all of that.
A lot going on.
Yeah, we'll be exploring the rise of AI in broadcasting. Also, how's the creator economy evolving? We have some unexpected revivals like chess making a comeback on mainstream TV, plus some exec moves, festival highlights, and even some zombie battles.
Oh yeah, can't forget the zombies.
Oh, you said zombie battles. Okay, now you've got my attention. But first, let's rewind a bit. Let's travel back in time. We're going back to the world of period dramas. I know you love a good historical escape.
Yeah.
And Belgravia. The next chapter is giving us those 1871 London vibes. They've transformed Langleybury Mansion into this beautiful backdrop, and the story centers around a couple navigating trauma and finding their identity in the midst of London's social scene.
Well, what's always captivated me about period dramas is how they weave those personal journeys with that historical context. It's more than just romance or intrigue. It's about understanding how people navigate societal shifts and personal challenges within a specific time period. And of course, the visuals are so important. Those intricate costumes, those grand sets, it's all part of that immersive experience.
Right. It's like stepping into a time capsule.
Exactly.
But speaking of changing times, let's talk about how technology is completely reshaping the media landscape,
Yeah.
and specifically the rise of AI in broadcasting. KBS, the Korean broadcasting system, declared 2025 the first year of AI broadcasting.
Right.
And they're not just talking the talk, they are walking the walk.
They're taking a bold approach. We're seeing AI-driven animation in shows like Korean Ghost Stories Gumiho, which is really kind of pushing those boundaries of what we think is possible. They're also using AI for more practical applications like their emergency detection systems. These can identify forest fires super early.
Right.
That's a potentially life-saving technology.
Yeah. Right. And get this, they're using AI anchors to make the news more accessible to the visually impaired.
Oh, wow.
It's pretty incredible. And it really struck me as a powerful example of how we can use technology for good to promote inclusivity and to break down those barriers.
It really is a great example of that. It makes you wonder what else AI can be used for in the future of broadcasting. Will we see more personalized news experiences, maybe content tailored to what individuals want?
Right.
Will AI even create entirely new forms of storytelling that we haven't even thought of yet? It's both exciting and maybe a little scary.
Yeah, very much so. It makes you wonder what the implications are.
Yeah.
Not just for the industry, but for us as viewers.
Yeah.
Okay. Now let's switch gears a bit and talk about the creator economy. It's facing its own set of challenges and opportunities. A recent study by Patreon highlighted this growing tension between wanting creative freedom and the demands of algorithms. It seems like creators are finding themselves in a tricky spot where their audience might be growing, but they're not making more money.
Yeah, and what's really interesting is that even though audience engagement is up, the algorithms are so unpredictable that creators are finding it difficult to make money from their work. It's causing a lot of them to look for different ways to make money, like those direct-to-fan models that platforms like Patreon offer.
Right. And by connecting directly with their biggest fans, creators can build a stable income that's not as reliant on these algorithms.
Exactly.
It's like building a direct and sustainable relationship,
It is.
cutting out the middleman.
We got it.
Mark Duplass, who's known for his independent filmmaking, is a great example of this. He couldn't get a traditional streaming deal for his latest show, The Long, Long Night, so he's doing something different. He's going to distribute it independently. So he's partnered with Seed and Spark to crowdfund. He's organizing these screenings to get people excited, and is testing a hybrid self-distribution model called the Independence Partnership.
Yeah, and his approach is really a fascinating case study. Instead of waiting for, a traditional studio to give him the go-ahead, he's creating his own path, right? He's connecting directly with his audience and maybe even changing the way that independent films are produced and distributed. So it makes you wonder, could this be a new model for other creators?
Yeah.
Could this be a way for them to have more control and ownership over their work?
It's a great question. It definitely challenges how things are typically done. Now let's move on to Channel 4. And their commitment to making documentaries. Their In Too Deep strand is known for this immersive investigative journalism, like Selling My Virginity. That one sparked a lot of conversation.
It did.
And their new call for pitches is focused on regional producers, especially young and upcoming reporters.
Right, and I think it's really great that they're actively looking for these fresh, new voices and perspectives, you know. They want stories that are bold and unflinching, stories that look at really complex issues, and they're specifically asking for pitches from those regions outside of, you know, the big media hubs. So it
Mhm.
shows that they're really committed to diversifying storytelling and highlighting experiences that might not get as much attention.
And they want these stories to be on YouTube, which is a smart move. They're reaching a much bigger audience, and especially those younger viewers who are getting their news and entertainment online.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to meet the audience where they are. And that's really important in today's media world. Now, on a completely different note, who would have thought that chess would be having a moment right now?
Right. It seems like BBC Two's Chess Masters, the Endgame, is a
Oh,
big reason for that. The story behind the show is really interesting, too. Curb Media CEO Camilla Lewis got the idea from her daughter, who started playing chess online during the pandemic,
oh,
and it helped her through a difficult time.
Yep.
And that sparked this idea for a show that could bring chess to more people.
that's a great story.
And the show's doing a good job of making chess accessible and entertaining. It's got these 12 amateur players competing in different challenges.
Yeah.
And the hosts, comedian Sue Perkins and chess coach Anthony Matherin, bring this fun mix of humor and expertise.
They do. And it makes it fun even for those of us who aren't chess masters, right?
Exactly. And it's not just this one show. It seems like the BBC is making a big push to revive chess on mainstream television.
Hmm.
I wonder if this is a sign of something bigger, like maybe people wanting more intellectual and strategic things in their entertainment.
That's a really interesting thought. Maybe in a world that often feels so chaotic and unpredictable, there's something appealing about the structure and logic of a game like chess.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, now let's move on to Warner Bros. They're making some pretty big bets with their new slate of original projects. We're talking Paul Thomas Anderson, Ryan Coogler, Emerald Fennell. These are directors that are known for pushing boundaries and taking risks. It feels like a risky move, right? They're trying to balance these auteur-driven films that film lovers go crazy for with those big-budget projects based on familiar stories that'll appeal to, larger audience. And they're doing this after Joker, Folie à Deux failed, so there's definitely pressure.
Definitely. It's a bold move, and it'll be interesting to see how it works out. They have some big budget films coming out, like Anderson's new film with DiCaprio and Coogler's Sinners. So this could be a make or break moment for Warner Bros. They could have a big comeback, or this could be a really costly mistake.
Right. It's like they're saying, we're not afraid to go big. Okay, let's go back a bit and talk about what happened after last year's WGA strike. One of the big wins was getting those performance-based streaming bonuses for writers. It was a huge victory for getting fair pay in the industry. Can you explain how those bonuses work?
Sure. So shows qualify for these bonuses when they're watched by at least 20% of subscribers in the US in the first 90 days after their release. So it's a pretty specific target.
So it encourages both the streaming platforms and the writers to create content that people really love.
Exactly. And by mid-2024, 5 shows had already hit that target, including the super popular Bridgerton. So it seems like this system is really working. And not just for writers, but for actors and directors as well.
It's a win for everyone involved in making these shows. And it sets a good example for fairer pay across the board. Now let's talk about Disney. They have this strategy for dominating advertising, and they're using big events like the Oscars to launch these multi-platform advertising campaigns that go across TV, streaming, and online. It's pretty clever.
It is. It's like they have this content everywhere strategy, and it seems to be working really well. Shows like Anora are doing great, and they've had record-breaking ad sales for the NCAA women's basketball tournament.
Wow.
They're really leaning into the power of live events, especially those exclusive things that you can only watch on their platforms.
It makes sense. Live events give you that sense of immediacy and that feeling of watching something together. And in a world where everything is so fragmented, that feeling of shared experience is really valuable both for the viewers and for the advertisers.
They're putting themselves in a position to be part of those big cultural conversations.
Exactly.
And with huge events like the Super Bowl and the Grammys coming up in 2027, it doesn't seem like they're going to be slowing down anytime soon. Now, while Disney's going after these massive events, HBO is quietly working on something that's been struggling.
Comedy. It seems kind of counterintuitive, right? The comedy market's getting smaller, but HBO is going all in. Amy Gravitt is leading this comedy comeback. They're bringing in new shows from talented people like Tim Robinson and Sharon Horgan.
And what's really interesting to me is their commitment to finding new and diverse voices. While their main comedy show, The Righteous Gemstones, is ending, they're building a lineup that's even better than Netflix, which has always been known for its comedies. Gravit says that CEO Casey Bloys has been super supportive, making sure that comedy stays a big part of what HBO is all about.
It's great to see a network really supporting comedy, a genre that's often overlooked.
Okay, we've covered a lot, but there's still so much from this news roundup that we need to talk about. Are you ready for a rapid fire round?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
All right, first up, some executive moves. The founders of Team 2, the French animation studio, have left after the company was bought by Riva Studios.
Oh, wow.
Makes you wonder how that change in leadership will affect their creative vision, right?
It does. It'll be interesting to see what happens.
And over at BBC Studios Kids and Family, Grain McNamara has been promoted to Vice President of Development. She'll be overseeing a bunch of live action and animation projects.
That's great news.
It is. Now over to film festivals. Spilt Milk, a film set in Dublin in 1984, won the Audience Award at the Glasgow Film Festival. Sounds like a powerful story, and it's always awesome to see up-and-coming filmmakers getting recognition.
Absolutely. And for anyone interested in Asian entertainment, the Hong Kong Entertainment Expo is coming up soon from March 16 to April 27.
Mark your calendars.
And if you can't get to Hong Kong, San Diego Comic-Con is going international for the first time ever with an event in Malaga, Spain. That's huge for pop culture fans.
That is huge.
Okay, now for some exciting new projects. Netflix is starting production on a Korean YA horror series called Wish Your Death. Sounds pretty creepy.
It does.
And for those of you who love home renovation shows, Channel 4 is launching a competition series called Chateau DIY, Win the Dream, where contestants can win an actual French chateau.
Oh, wow. I'm already hooked.
I know, right? And for fans of the ITV thriller After the Flood, filming for Season 2 has begun.
Great.
And Netflix has acquired this true crime documentary called The Perfect Neighbor for $5 million, so it must be pretty good.
It sounds like it.
Sadly, CBS's The Neighborhood is ending after 8 seasons. But on a brighter note, Deal or No Deal is coming back to Swedish television after 11 years.
Wow, that's awesome.
It is.
Yeah.
That was a whirlwind of entertainment news. What were some of the things that surprised you the most? I'm still trying to process the fact that Daisy Ridley's going to be in a zombie movie.
Oh, I know. We Bury the Dead.
Yeah.
It sounds like they're going to do something really different with the zombie genre, and they're being super secretive about the plot twists, which makes it even more interesting.
Absolutely.
But beyond the individual stories, what's really striking me is how dynamic and interconnected the entertainment industry is. We're seeing AI becoming a big thing, certain genres making a comeback, the line between movies and TV getting blurry, and storytelling reaching a global audience. It's a really fascinating time to be following all of this.
I totally agree.
You know, when we were talking about Deal or No Deal coming back, it made me think about how trends in entertainment can be kind of like a cycle.
Right.
What's old becomes new again.
It's true. Like fashion.
Yeah.
What goes around comes around. But it's not just about being nostalgic, is it? Sometimes it's about taking those classic things and reimagining them for today's audience.
Exactly. Take Deal or No Deal, for example. The idea is super simple, but there's this suspense and risk that keeps you hooked.
And in a world where we're bombarded with information and choices, that simplicity can be really appealing. There's a certain comfort in the familiar. But while some things come back around, others are breaking new ground, like AI in media production, which we talked about earlier. We discussed KBS's approach, but they're not the only ones. Lots of companies are exploring AI, which is exciting, but it also raises some big questions.
It does. AI has so much potential, but we have to think about the ethical side of things too. Like, what about people losing their jobs? Or the possibility of bias in algorithms? What if AI starts creating content that's misleading or even harmful? It's important to have open and honest conversations about these things as AI keeps developing.
You're right. We need to be careful and make sure this technology is used responsibly. Now, remember when we talked about Disney's strategy of using big events like the Oscars for their advertising? Their content everywhere approach seems to be working. But are there any downsides to it?
Well, their approach is definitely effective, but it makes you wonder if it could lead to everything looking the same, you know? Could this focus on appealing to everyone result in less diversity in storytelling? And what about the possibility of content becoming too commercialized? These are definitely things to think about.
That's a good point. It's about finding a balance, reaching a wide audience, while also supporting those unique voices and perspectives. Speaking of exciting developments, let's talk about some of the projects and deals that caught our eye. Thomas Vinterberg, the director of Another Round, is making his TV debut with a show called Families Like Ours for the BBC.
Oh, wow.
I'm a big fan of his work, so I'm curious to see what he does with television.
Me too. It's always exciting to see talented filmmakers moving into TV. And speaking of talent, Yahya Abdul-Mateen II, who was in Watchmen and Candyman, has signed a deal with Sony Pictures Television.
That's a big deal. His production company, House 1110, is all about creating diverse and interesting content. I can't wait to see what stories come out of that partnership. Now, remember we discussed Mark Duplass and his decision to self-distribute The Long, Long Night.
Yeah.
Another story that stood out to me was the film Spilt Milk, which won the Audience Award at the Glasgow Film Festival. It's a first film by Brian Durnan, set in Dublin during the 1984 heroin epidemic, and it's told from the perspective of an 11-year-old boy.
That's such a unique perspective. It just shows how important it is to support new filmmakers and give them a platform for their stories.
Absolutely. Sometimes the most impactful stories come from the most unexpected places. Let's switch gears for a second and talk about sports. Sweden's AIK Football Club is partnering with Pluto TV to launch their own FAST channel, which is pretty innovative.
It is.
For those who don't know, FAST stands for Free Ad-Supported Streaming TV. It's basically like a regular TV channel, but it's online and it's free because it has ads.
Right. It's a smart move by AIK considering how popular those free streaming services are becoming.
Yeah.
They're reaching their fans in a new way and making money from advertising. It's a win-win.
It is. Speaking of strategic moves, let's talk about the business side of the industry. There have been so many mergers and acquisitions lately. It's like a big chess game with companies battling for control and market share.
That's a great way to put it. And one of the big things happening right now is the opening of Oran Park Studios near Sydney. It's this huge production hub that cost 127 million Australian dollars. It'll have 3 sound stages, workshops, even a helipad.
Wow, that's a serious investment.
Uh,
It shows how much demand there is for studio space, both in Australia and around the world.
yeah, Australia has become a really popular place for filming, and this new studio will probably bring even more productions there.
Absolutely. It'll create jobs, help the local economy, and solidify Australia's place in the global entertainment industry.
Mm.
Now, back to content. We mentioned Bridgerton getting those bonuses for its writers after the strike, which is a great example of how collective action can make a real difference. And let's not forget about chess masters. The end game. It's part of this bigger trend of chess becoming popular again, which is so interesting to me. It's a game that's been around forever, and now it's finding a new audience in the digital age.
It shows how much people still appreciate strategy and intellectual stimulation.
Right.
And it reminds us that entertainment can be anything from a huge blockbuster film to a simple game of chess.
So true. Okay, we've talked about a lot in this deep dive, from AI anchors to zombie movies, French chateaus to Swedish game shows. It's been quite a ride. But before we wrap up this part, there's one more interesting thing I wanted to mention. It's about this production company called the Cinemark, and they've been making headlines with their documentary Murdaugh Murders, a Southern Scandal. They just got some funding and made a deal with Truly Original, and now they're developing a documentary series based on a podcast called The Competition.
Wow, that's cool. You don't see a podcast being turned into a docuseries every day.
Right.
What's the podcast about?
It's about this program in America called Distinguished Young Women, and it follows 7 girls as they compete for scholarships. It's a pretty high-pressure competition.
That sounds like a really interesting premise for a docuseries.
Yeah.
They're taking something that was just audio and turning it into something you can watch. What's really cool is that Charlize Theron's company is working with the Cinemark on a true crime documentary.
Theron has become such a powerful figure in the industry, both as an actress and a producer.
She has.
So having her involved definitely makes the project more credible. It'll be fascinating to see how they bring this podcast to life on screen and capture all the layers of the story.
It really shows how innovative the entertainment industry is. They're blurring the lines between different types of media and finding new ways to tell captivating stories.
Speaking of blurring lines, the global reach of entertainment is another thing I've been thinking about. Korean dramas, Bollywood films, Scandinavian crime thrillers. These stories are finding huge audiences all over the world.
It's a global phenomenon, and it's partly because of streaming services. We have access to so much content from different countries now, and it's creating opportunities for people from different cultures to connect and understand each other better.
It's amazing to see how stories can cross borders and resonate with people on a human level. But with all this choice comes more responsibility for us as viewers.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
We need to be aware of what we're watching, seek out diverse voices and perspectives, and support content that reflects the real world in all its richness and complexity.
It's amazing to think about how connected the world of entertainment has become. We're
Yeah.
seeing this global exchange of stories and styles and ideas. But even with all this globalization, there's also this renewed appreciation for those stories that really dig into specific cultural nuances, like Spilt Milk, which we talked about earlier.
Yeah, and what really got me about Spilt Milk was how it just takes you to that specific time and place. Dublin in 1984, during that heroin epidemic. It's a story that's so connected to that specific cultural context. But those themes of family and loss and resilience, those are things that everyone can relate to.
It really is a reminder that even the most personal and culturally specific stories can resonate with a global audience. Okay, before we wrap up our deep dive, I wanted to go back to the story that first caught my eye. Daisy Ridley, fighting zombies in We Bury the Dead.
I'm still so curious about that twist they're keeping secret. It feels like they're doing it on purpose to get us all excited.
Yeah, it's a really smart marketing strategy.
Right.
They're giving us just enough to make us curious, but not too much.
Exactly.
And it plays into that part of us that loves the unexpected. We want to be surprised. We want things to go differently than we thought they would.
Right, and the fact that it's directed by Zach Hilditch, who does a lot of horror and thrillers, makes it even more exciting.
It does. It makes you think that this isn't just some silly zombie movie. There's going to be some deeper meaning and emotional stuff in there. I'm also curious about how they'll portray the zombies. Are they going to be those classic, slow-moving, flesh-eating zombies, or will they do something completely different?
The zombie genre has changed so much over the years.
Yes.
It's become this way to explore really complex themes like grief, loss, the breakdown of society, and even what it means to be human. I wonder if We Bury the Dead will touch on those deeper ideas or if it'll be more of an action-packed, in-your-face kind of experience.
We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things that's been so fascinating during this deep dive is how the entertainment industry is always changing and adapting. From streaming to AI, the landscape is constantly shifting.
And with that evolution comes a whole wave of new opportunities and challenges. We're seeing the lines between movies and TV disappear, the old ways of distribution are being disrupted, and there are entirely new forms of entertainment popping up. It's a wild and unpredictable time to be in this industry.
It really is. It makes you wonder what's next. Will virtual reality become the main form of entertainment? Will we have content that's personalized to our specific tastes? Will AI create entirely new genres and ways of telling stories?
The possibilities are endless, and that's what makes this such an exciting field to be a part of.
Yeah.
But even with all this innovation, we can't forget about the importance of human connection, the shared experience of stories, and the magic of a well-told narrative.
That's so true. In the end, it's all about the stories. The stories that make us feel things, that challenge us, that make us laugh and cry and think. And as long as there are stories to be told, there will be people who want to hear them.
Well said. It's been great diving into this world of entertainment with you. It's a huge and ever-changing world, but it's one that's full of surprises, insights, and most importantly, stories that can connect us all.
I couldn't agree more. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you've enjoyed it, and we encourage you to keep exploring this amazing world of entertainment. Until next time, keep watching, keep listening, and keep those imaginations going.